I, 27F, never thought I'd be writing this, but the events of the past few weeks have left me angry and confused. I need outside perspective to know if I'm overreacting about my Mill Sarah's, 45F, behavior. This is a long story, so bear with me. My husband Jake, 29M, and I have a 13-month-old son Liam. Since birth, Liam has had severe asthma that's landed us in urgent care more times than I can count. His breathing issues are so bad that even a simple cold can turn dangerous quickly. He needs daily medication and has a nebulizer that we use whenever his breathing gets difficult. Some background about our family situation: Jake's father passed away when Jake was 12, leaving Sarah to raise him and his sister Amy, 31F, alone. Because of this, Jake has always been extremely close to his mom and finds it hard to say no to her. When I first met Sarah 5 years ago, she seemed nice enough. She wasn't exactly warm towards me, but she was polite. Things changed after Jake proposed. During our engagement, Sarah started making comments about how I was taking her baby away. She'd call Jake multiple times a day and guilt him if he didn't answer immediately. At our wedding, she wore white and cried loudly during the ceremony, not happy tears, but loud sobbing about losing her son. We tried to ignore her behavior because Jake said she was just having a hard time adjusting. When I got pregnant, Sarah's behavior got worse. She demanded to be in the delivery room, insisted on moving in with us for the first few months, and tried to decorate our nursery without asking. When we set boundaries, she wouldn't speak to us for weeks. She only came around when Liam was born, stayed for a week, and left angry because we wouldn't let her take over completely. Sarah and her family live about 9 hours away from us. Because of Liam's health issues and COVID, we haven't visited them since he was born. Sarah started pushing hard for us to come for Thanksgiving this year. She called daily, saying we were selfish for keeping her grandson away from family, and that everyone needed to meet him. Every time we mentioned concerns about Liam getting sick, she'd get angry and accuse us of using his health as an excuse. Jake felt terrible about the whole situation. He hated disappointing his mom, and after weeks of her guilt-tripping, he asked if we could go. I wasn't comfortable with the idea, but I agreed because I saw how much it meant to him. Sarah promised repeatedly that everyone was healthy and that we were being paranoid. We arrived at Sarah's house the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The house was packed: Amy, her husband Tom, their 2 kids, Sarah's sister Beth, her husband, and their 3 kids were all there. Sarah immediately grabbed Liam from me, ignoring his cries of discomfort. She paraded him around, introducing him to everyone as her perfect grandson while barely acknowledging me. Things seemed okay at first, though I noticed several people coughing and sniffling. When I asked about it, they blamed allergies or the cold weather. Liam started getting fussy Thursday afternoon, but I assumed it was because of all the noise and unfamiliar faces. Everything fell apart Friday morning. I was in the kitchen getting Liam's breakfast ready when I overheard Beth's teenage daughter on the phone with a friend. She was saying how glad she was to feel better after being sick all week, and that almost everyone in the house had caught the same cold. My heart dropped. I confronted Beth, who casually admitted that several family members had been sick but were feeling better. When I asked Sarah about it, she waved it off, saying they were all over it and that I needed to stop being dramatic. She said every baby needs to be exposed to germs to build immunity. By Friday evening, Liam was coughing badly. We packed up immediately despite Sarah's protests. She kept saying we were overreacting and ruining Thanksgiving. The 9-hour drive home was terrifying. Liam's cough got worse, and he started wheezing. We had to stop twice to give him his nebulizer treatments. Sunday morning, Liam woke up with a terrible cough and a fever of 103. We rushed him to urgent care, but his condition kept getting worse. His breathing became so labored that we ended up in the ER. The doctors diagnosed him with RSV and bronchitis, a dangerous combination with his asthma. His oxygen levels were so low that they had to transfer him to a bigger hospital with a pediatric unit. The doctors told us we were lucky to bring him in when we did. They said if we'd waited even a few more hours, things could have been catastrophic. My baby spent 5 days in the hospital, hooked up to monitors and oxygen support, fighting to breathe. During this time, we received so much support. My parents drove 6 hours to help us. My friends brought us clothes and food. My college roommate, who I haven't spoken to in years, called to check on Liam. Even our neighbors offered to watch our house and collect our mail. But Sarah? She never called once. Jake kept sending her updates and pictures of Liam in the hospital, showing how serious the situation was. All she did was react with heart emojis or leave his messages on read. Not once did she ask how Liam was doing or if we needed anything. We're home now, and Liam is slowly recovering, but he still needs his nebulizer more often than before. Sarah still hasn't called to check on him. Jake is hurt but keeps making excuses, saying she probably feels guilty and doesn't know what to say. Amy called once to apologize for not telling us about the illness, but even she defended their mom, saying Sarah just wanted the family together for Thanksgiving. I'm beyond angry. They knowingly exposed my baby to illness that could have killed him, then couldn't even be bothered to check on him in the hospital. I want to cut contact with Sarah completely, but I know this would devastate Jake. He's already struggling with guilt, believing he should have stood up to his mom about the visit. Am I overreacting? Should I say something to Sarah about her behavior, or just let it go for Jake's sake? I don't know how to move forward from this, but I know I can never trust her with Liam's well-being again. Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments. Your advice helped me realize I wasn't overreacting. A lot has happened since my last post, and unfortunately, things have only gotten worse. After reading your responses, I decided to have a serious talk with Jake about everything. We put Liam to bed one night and sat down to discuss how I felt about his mom's behavior. I told him I couldn't forgive her for knowingly endangering our son and then showing zero concern when he ended up in the hospital. Jake was quiet for a long time, just staring at his phone. Then he showed me something that made my stomach turn. Throughout Liam's hospital stay, Sarah had been texting Jake constantly, not to ask about Liam, but to justify her actions and criticize our parenting. She sent him dozens of articles about how kids need germ exposure to build immunity. She found mommy blog posts about overprotective parents damaging their children's immune systems. She even sent him screenshots from some anti-vax website claiming that asthma is caused by overprotective parenting. The worst messages were about me. She told Jake that I was manipulating him and using Liam's health as a weapon against her. When Jake sent her pictures of Liam on oxygen support, she replied that I was probably exaggerating his condition to make her look bad. She accused me of convincing the doctors to keep Liam in the hospital longer than necessary just to punish her. One message particularly stood out. She wrote, "Your wife is turning my grandson into a weak, sickly child. She's poisoning him against his family and using his made-up health issues to control you. You need to man up and stop letting her destroy our family bonds. This isn't how I raised you." Jake had been hiding these messages from me because he didn't want to add to my stress while Liam was sick. He felt ashamed of his mom's behavior and hoped she would eventually apologize. Instead, she got worse. But here's where things get even more twisted. Yesterday, Amy called Jake crying. She confessed something that made us both furious. Before Thanksgiving, Sarah had called a family meeting without us. She told everyone that several people had caught colds but made them promise not to tell us. She convinced them that if we knew about the illness, we would use it as an excuse not to come. According to Amy, Sarah spent an hour talking about how I was trying to keep Liam away from his real family. She told them this might be their only chance to bond with him because I was poisoning Jake against them. She made everyone feel guilty, saying they needed to help her protect her relationship with her son and grandson. Amy said she felt terrible about lying, but Sarah had manipulated them all. She made it seem like they were helping save our family by hiding the truth. Amy only came clean now because she couldn't live with the guilt anymore, especially after seeing how sick Liam got. When Jake heard this, something broke in him. He always defended his mom, always found ways to excuse her behavior. But this was different. She had orchestrated a deliberate deception that put our son's life at risk, all to get her way. We decided to take a break from Sarah. Jake sent her a message explaining that we needed space after learning about her premeditated plan to hide everyone's illness. We told her that her behavior during Liam's hospitalization and her messages blaming me were unacceptable. Sarah's response was exactly what you'd expect from a narcissist. She started calling every family member, crying about how cruel we were being. She told them we were keeping her grandson from her over a little cold that wasn't even her fault. She painted herself as the victim of her cruel daughter-in-law and weak son who couldn't stand up to his wife. Some relatives have been messaging us nonstop, telling us we're being too harsh. They say Sarah cries every day about missing Liam, that she's their grandmother and has rights, that families should forgive each other. Amy and Tom are the only ones supporting us. After Sarah's manipulation came to light, they've also decided to distance themselves from her. Jake is struggling to process everything. He keeps looking at pictures of Liam in the hospital, saying he can't believe his mom would deliberately put her grandson at risk and then try to blame everyone else. The messages she sent him during Liam's hospitalization keep playing in his head. He started seeing a therapist to deal with the guilt and betrayal he's feeling. Meanwhile, Liam is still dealing with the aftermath of his illness. His breathing hasn't fully returned to normal, and he needs his inhaler more frequently than before. The doctors say it might take months for his lungs to fully recover, if they ever do. Every time he has trouble breathing, I remember that it's because his grandmother cared more about having her perfect Thanksgiving than his safety. Sarah keeps trying to contact us through different phone numbers and social media accounts. She's even gotten random family members to message us on her behalf. We're blocking them all. Some of you suggested legal action. We're considering it, but right now we just want peace and distance from her toxic behavior. I'll update if anything major happens, but for now, we're focusing on healing as a family and keeping toxic influences away from our son. Update 2. I need to update again because things have escalated beyond what we expected. Sarah has completely lost control since we cut contact with her, and her behavior has become increasingly erratic. Last week, Sarah showed up at our house unannounced with Jake's Aunt Beth. We were having breakfast when we heard loud knocking. Through our security camera, we saw them standing on our porch with a huge gift basket. I refused to open the door and told them through the camera to leave. Instead of leaving, Sarah started crying and screaming on our porch about how cruel I was for keeping her away from her only grandson. She yelled about how I had brainwashed Jake and destroyed their family. That stood there filming everything on her phone, probably trying to make us look bad on social media. Our neighbors called the police because of the scene Sarah was creating. When the officers arrived, Sarah tried playing victim. She told them we were abusing Liam by keeping him isolated from his loving family. She claimed she was just a concerned grandmother trying to check on her grandson's welfare. Thankfully, we had documented everything: the hospital records, screenshots of her messages blaming me for Liam's hospitalization, and texts showing how she orchestrated hiding the family's illness before Thanksgiving. The officers warned Sarah about trespassing and told her to leave. They advised us to file for a restraining order if she showed up again. We thought that would be the end of it, but Sarah found new ways to harass us. She started spreading vicious rumors in our community. Amy called to warn us that Sarah had been telling family members that Liam was never really sick in the hospital. According to her new version of events, I made up the whole hospitalization to turn Jake against his family. She even claimed that the hospital photos Jake sent her were old pictures from when Liam had a minor cold, and that I was using them to manipulate everyone. Some relatives actually believed her and started posting on social media about how I was using Liam's health to abuse my mother-in-law. The situation hit rock bottom when Sarah showed up at Jake's workplace. She managed to get past reception by saying she was bringing him lunch. Instead, she cornered Jake's boss in the break room and started telling him that Jake was being manipulated by his wife and needed an intervention. She claimed I was isolating Jake from his family and that his boss needed to help save him from my influence. Jake's boss, who knew about Liam's hospitalization because Jake had taken emergency leave, immediately called security. While being escorted out, Sarah was screaming about how I had turned everyone against her and ruined her life. That was the final straw for Jake. He drove to Sarah's house that evening to confront her. She started crying as soon as she saw him, but not because she felt guilty. Instead, she launched into a speech about how I had been trying to destroy their mother-son bond since day one. She said she only hid the family's illness because she knew I would use it as an excuse to keep Liam away from her. When Jake showed her Liam's medical records again and reminded her that the doctors said he could have died, she accused us of paying the doctors to exaggerate a simple cold just to punish her. She refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing and kept insisting she was the real victim. That's when Jake finally saw his mother clearly for the first time. She would rather believe her own twisted reality than admit she almost killed her grandson through her selfish actions. We got a lawyer involved and had a cease and desist letter sent to her. Jake told her directly that if she showed up at our house or his workplace again, we would get a restraining order. Her response was to play victim on social media, posting long rants about cruel daughters-in-law who destroy families and keep grandmothers from their precious grandchildren. The family is divided now. Some think we're being too harsh and should forgive Sarah for Liam's sake. Others, especially those who witnessed her meltdown at Jake's workplace, have started to see her manipulation for what it is. Amy told us that Sarah has always been like this, making everything about herself and never accepting responsibility for her actions. We just never saw it clearly until now. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but for now, we're documenting everything in case we need to take legal action. Update 3. I've been getting a lot of messages asking for another update, so here's what's happened in the past few months. This will be my final update because we've reached a point of no return with Sarah. After her meltdown at Jake's workplace, Sarah's behavior became increasingly unstable. She started spreading rumors in our community that I was deliberately keeping Liam sick to get attention. She told people I was making up his asthma and that I enjoyed having a sick child because it gave me control over Jake. The situation reached a dangerous point when Sarah contacted Liam's pediatrician. She called the office claiming to be concerned about medical neglect, saying I was making Liam sick on purpose. She tried to get access to his medical records by saying she was his legal guardian. The pediatrician's office immediately alerted us and documented everything. But the final straw came last month. Sarah showed up at Liam's daycare during pickup time. She told the staff she was his emergency contact and needed to take him home because of a family emergency. When they checked their records and found she wasn't authorized to pick him up, she lost it. Sarah started screaming that I was an unfit mother and that she needed to save her grandson. The daycare had to go into lockdown to protect the children. They called the police while Sarah banged on the doors, demanding to see Liam. By the time officers arrived, she had already left, but the whole incident was caught on the daycare security cameras. After the daycare incident, getting the restraining order was surprisingly easy. The judge looked at our evidence, the medical records, the messages, the daycare incident report, and the police reports from her showing up at our house and Jake's workplace, and immediately granted the order. Jake hasn't spoken to his mom since then. The daycare incident was his breaking point. Seeing the security footage of his mother trying to take Liam without permission made him realize she wasn't just manipulative, she was dangerous to our family. Amy supports our decision completely now. She told us that Sarah's behavior has gotten progressively worse over the years, but the family always excused it as her being overprotective or just passionate about family. The daycare incident opened everyone's eyes to how far she would go. Liam still deals with breathing issues from the RSV incident. His doctors say the infection worsened his asthma, and it might be a long-term problem. Every time he has an attack, I think about how it all started because Sarah decided her wants were more important than his life. We moved to a new house in a gated community last month. We didn't share our new address with anyone except Amy and Tom, who we trust completely. It feels extreme, but after Sarah tried to take Liam from daycare, we needed to feel secure. Sarah tells everyone who will listen that she has no son anymore, that I brainwashed Jake into abandoning his mother. She posts daily on social media about ungrateful children and evil daughters-in-law who destroy families. Most of the family ignores her now, even her strongest supporters couldn't defend her trying to take Liam without permission. Jake says he feels relieved not having his mom in his life anymore, though I know it hurts him deeply. He's in therapy now, working through years of manipulation and guilt. He says he wishes things were different, but he'll never risk Liam's safety for his mother's feelings again. This is my final update. Sometimes protecting your family means cutting out toxic people, even if those people are family themselves. Thank you all for your support throughout this nightmare. We're focused now on keeping Liam healthy and safe, and on building a peaceful life without Sarah's chaos.